Okay, first. First home buyers, if you are wondering if it's different from now to 10 years ago, to 20 years ago, to 30 years ago for you, compared to your brothers or sisters, family or friends, or your parents when they bought, we're going to cover that this morning. And we've got some really interesting sort of information to go through. Josh, welcome.
Thank you, Mark. Morning to everyone. It's quite interesting, this topic.
It's been a smooth morning, technology-wise.
Yeah, it sure has. Sorry for the delay, guys. Bit of technical difficulties, but better late than ever. Touching base on first home buyers, we actually had a different topic lined up for today, guys, but I was doing some reading this morning early at work and said to Mark, I really want to speak about this. I find this quite interesting and probably something that is very relevant to a lot of clients or a lot of viewers' lives. Most people always buy it's your first property. And there was some really outlandish stats in regards to not 10, 20, 30, but massive changes over as little as 5 years, which was quite astounding based on property prices and affordability for first home buyers and what's available to them in the current market. And then also that idea of how much of that mortgage is absorbing the income of first home buyers as well. I thought that was quite an interesting point where we sort of compare wage growth as opposed to property prices, and that gap seems to be getting bigger and bigger, and therefore creating more and more of that affordability buffer for first home buyers.
So it's harder?
Yeah, much harder. I think across, there were some states that were bigger than others. But for example, New South Wales from 2019, 2020 up to 2024, 25, the amount of available homes. So guys, what this means is an average first home buyer's budget. Based on that budget, what property could they purchase within New South Wales? Well, that's gone from as high as 30% down to about 12% in today's current market. Victoria, we've seen 15% drop to 10%. Queensland was a really big one, 60% down to 15% in 5 years, which is huge. WA, 60% back in 2020, 25% now in 2025. And Australia as a whole, as an average, you're looking at about 30% down to 12% there. So you're looking at almost half of the available stock to first home buyers being completely priced out of their market in as little as 5 years, which is astounding. Wouldn't you say, Mark? You've been in the real estate game longer than me. It's quite, I think we might have lost him, guys. But yeah, what we're touching on is just obviously the affordability side of things. So obviously, when you're taking that supply out of the market from first home buyers, there's going to be some that miss out. There's going to be probably higher competition over those affordable products that are available on the market. Look, don't be like to be the bearer of bad news, but it obviously doesn't point to anything positive on the affordability sense. So I thought that was a really, really big point. Another set of data that they put forward was just in regards to household incomes, interest rates, loan terms, pretty much giving you a snapshot of what buying a property in 2020 versus 2025 would be. So household income for an average first home buyer, 150 grand. So that's obviously partner, either partner's husband or wife. That average income needed to be closer to about 180,000, which is massive in that 5 year difference. Mortgage interest rates, obviously, as an average in 2020, they've taken 4% into a comparison of 5.5. And the proportion of gross income to repayment has jumped significantly. Back in 2020, we were looking at about 23% proportion of your gross income to repayments. That's jumped significantly up towards 31%. And so was your average purchase price. So your average purchase price was about 560,000 for Australia back at 5 years ago. Today, you're looking at about 760,000. So that's obviously quite a massive jump. You know, you're sort of looking at almost 50% over those 5 years, which is amazing. And then obviously we come back to that share of homes within budget, which we looked at before. So that's come to that 30% right down to that 12% level. So obviously it's quite crazy listening to those numbers and being able to see how much of a change with only 5 years. And I think from my point of view, I wanted to stress the importance of getting into the market as soon as you can. Sorry guys, I think Mark will join us. Just a few technical difficulties this morning. He'll pop back in. But yeah, just the importance of entering the market. We've seen the changes over those last 5 years, and you know, if that continues the way it is, I would dare say that there's going to be a cohort of people that will be life renters, the way that this is tracking. So I really wanted to push home that part of the importance of getting into the market. Not only that, it's a real life example of the growth, wage versus property. The properties are outperformed growth on a magnitude, which really just shows the importance of having that investment of property and being exposed to that market of growth. So that was my point of it. I think while Mark's trying to get back in, his sort of play on it was, well, who's to blame? So obviously, you know, it always comes back to the government in a way. But I think one of his major points was in regards to, oh, there we go.
What's happened today? Technology is not going on my side today. Sorry, mate.
No, that's all right, Marco. Perfect timing. I was actually just heading into your point about superannuation. You know, a bit of what we spoke about this morning. If you want to start from the beginning there, I only just began to start talking about it.
Yeah, look, it's really interesting because I asked Josh the question, how much does he reckon a 20 to 30-year-old can save from their wage in New South Wales, Australia? And your answer, I think, was 20%. And I said to Josh, what if I said to you that half of that is diminished? And he goes, what do you mean? I said, well, in 1992, you gave nothing to no one in relation to saving for superannuation. Today, you give 12%. And I know people say, oh, that's okay, the employer's paying it, it's not the employee. But at the end of the day, there's that 12%. If you're only saving 20%, that 12% is more than half. And they're saying, we're going to take half of your savings, we're going to give it back to you when you're 67. And I think it's great planning for the future, but shit, it makes it hard to save for a deposit. It makes it hard to cash flow because the banks are not, if you're not getting that money, that's less money you can lend. Which makes it harder to buy again. So I guess there's so many angles, and we can go down the rabbit warren of super, and you know, first home buyers have got less than what their parents had because of something like that. And half of their savings is diminished because they're putting it towards their super. Or I guess I think Josh, we talked about some public spending that we went down the rabbit hole as well on, and things like that. But you know, it's definitely, it's harder, but you've really got to be, as a first home buyer, you've really got to be quite cunning and understanding the system and how to work it for you. You may have to hustle mum and dad. You may have to buy with a family member a property, but you know, to hack the system, because it is definitely harder, and you can hear from those numbers that you've quoted this morning. It's definitely harder for these guys.
Yeah, definitely, Mark, and that's what I was touching on while you're on the other trying to get back in, was just that we've seen the last 10 years as an example, how much property has performed and how much it has outperformed wages, which has led us to this point of unaffordability. So you really would be silly not exposing yourself to a market like this when we've seen the growth out of it that we've seen in the last 10 years, let alone the last 5 years from those facts that I've just shown you. I think the median house rose about 50% in Australia in the last 5 years. I mean, generally we go up the metric that property on the Northern Beaches doubles every 10 years. So that's pretty much saying that, because we're halfway there and halfway to doubling. So that really just puts that metric into place about Australia and property in highly high demand areas. So yeah, just exposing yourself. And my biggest thing would be being a young fellow myself and, trying to get into the market. It isn't easy, but just make that leap. I think the biggest advice we throw around in the office is stretch yourself. Nothing good comes easy. So if you have to get on the old rice and beans for the next 3 to 6 months, but you're exposing yourself to markets like these, do it. That's all I have to say.
And also, we used to, if you couldn't afford to get in an area, you could afford to get in another area. But I think with building costs so high, even other areas of Sydney haven't been able to drop stock into the grid because of the cost of building. It's just simply not economical. The cost of building so high. So it's going to be a really interesting landscape on the back of that the next 5 to 10 years. But I think what you said, Josh, and particularly as a young guy, and we say that, in the office, like, stretch yourself and engineer yourself to just make it happen, because you sort of can't afford not to.
Exactly. Yeah. Well put, Mark.
All right. Sorry about the technical hitches this morning, Josh.
No, it's always good to keep it interesting, keep me on my toes. But no, it was great. Thanks, guys, for listening in. But yeah, real important one. Stretch yourself. That's how I'll leave it.
Love it. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks.
See ya.
See ya.